Hey, we're the Board Girls. Today we'll be going through a rules walkthrough for the game
Root! You've probably seen it or at least heard of it because it's been making waves in the board game community, and definitely for good reason.
Root is a fantastic game and I do think it'll stand the test of time and be enjoyed for quite a while. Let's get right into it.
Into the woods! As a crowd favorite, Root definitely takes a cake, or rather, the carrot, for accessibility and entertainment. And the woodland characters are just so cute.
But don't let their cuteness fool you. The game is definitely packed with fierce competition in order to strategically gain control over the woods.
It's definitely a power struggle, and it's a game of adventure and battle that lends itself to really good strategy, but strategy that has to be constantly revamped because of the dynamic of trying to take over the same wilderness. Okay, so Root is played with 2 to 4 factions, and these factions are vying for 30 total victory points. The victory points are tracked on the bottom of the board, which we will show you later. In the expansion for Root, there are 2 additional factions, but we will not be going over those today, maybe in a later video. The intriguing part of this game is that each of the factions do have different motivations for controlling the woods, so the ways that they gain victory points are completely different as well.
Yeah, we have the Marquise de Cat who builds and sustains in order to maintain control of the woods.
We also have the noble Eyrie. They expand and conquer in order to show that they can still rule the woods like they have in the past, but with a little bit of fluctuation.
This cute little mouse is the Woodlands Alliance. They create sympathy and undermine the Woodlands creature competition while building strength to ignite a rebellion.
We also have the Vagabond. He is the lone wanderer of the woods. He can either hurt or help different factions, whatever benefits himself. He also is trying to gain tools and items in the forest while trying to accomplish quests.
When you look at the board, you'll see a few things. 12 clearings, all with their own suit. Fox, mouse, rabbit. 1 to 3 building slots in each clearing. This is where factions will build buildings or produce crafts. In the slots marked R, ruins marked with a corresponding R are assigned randomly under the ruin markers at the beginning of the game. You can't build on ruin slots until they are removed by the Vagabond. Paths connecting the clearings. These are the sole travel for all factions but the Vagabond. The Vagabond can also scurry around in the forest with a special action. An item supply at the top of the board. This is filled with the various item tokens used in the game, excluding the ones denoted with S. Those ones are for the Vagabond during his setup. The general deck. Shuffle these cards and place in an accessible space for all factions. These cards have a few features. The suits correspond to matching clearings. These suits, either fox, mouse, rabbit, or bird, describe where that card's action can take place. Bird cards are wild, so you can use them for resolving actions in any clearing. There's also the crafting requirements on some of the cards. The icon shows how many crafting capabilities a faction must have in the matching clearings to craft an item or activate an immediate or persistent effect, but never 2 of the same persistent effects. Once you decide, set your faction's marker on the 0 of the victory point track. Now you're ready to begin playing.
Now that the board is set up, let's go over the common mechanics each faction will use throughout the game. In order to rule a clearing, you must be the player with the most pieces on that clearing. Both wood and cardboard pieces contribute to ruling a clearing. Ruling a clearing can determine whether you are eligible to complete an action, build a structure, or the next step, which is movement. To move, you must rule the origin clearing, the destination, or both. Any number of your faction's warriors can be moved during one move action, but only to adjacent clearings connected by a straight path. As we already mentioned, the Vagabond has special movement actions since he can slip into the forests. Moving onto an occupied clearing can lead to battling, if you choose to do this. To battle, the attacker declares their defending opponent and rolls the 2 dice. The dice have a range from 0 to 3. The larger value is dealt as damage to the defender from the attacker, up to the number of the attacker pieces present. The attacker is damaged in battle equal to the lower die value up to the number of the defender pieces present. If the values are equal, the factions remove an equal amount of pieces from that clearing. If any extra hits are to be counted from special abilities, this gets factored in before the final step of removing pieces. An attacking faction always deals an extra hit to defenseless spots because there are no warriors to defend the clearing. This can lend itself to an instant hit dealt to defenseless cardboard tokens, but the attacker must still roll the dice. There are also cards that can deal an ambush. This can be played to deal hits before the battle starts if it matches the clearing. An ambush can be foiled by another ambush being played. The ambush action is detailed on the card and in the rulebook if additional clarification is needed. The player taking the damage determines what pieces to remove from the battle clearing, but tokens and buildings are removed last. If an attacker removes a token or a building from the clearing by dealing a hit, 1 victory point is gained for each one removed from the board. There are some battle modifiers based on factions themselves, but we'll cover that when we go over the individual factions.
Alright, so a player will complete each of the 3 phases. These are denoted as birdsong, daylight, and then evening. After completing these 3 phases, the turn will go to the next player. In the rulebook, the turn order is denoted as Marquise de Cat as first, then the Eyrie, then the Alliance, and then finally the Vagabond. On each of the player mats, we do have the special characteristics of each faction listed at the top, as well as the specific actions that each faction can take under the birdsong, daylight, and evening phases. There's also individual setup listed on the board, and on the back of the board, there is the initial setup, which is very easy to follow and very straightforward, so we won't be going over that today.
The Marquise de Cat is the faction that begins controlling the woods. They're also an industrious faction. They maintain and build infrastructure to retain control of the woods while expanding their empires through sawmills, workshops, and recruiters. They also begin the game with a warrior on each clearing, except the clearing opposite of their keep, because that's where the Eyrie reside. For the Marquise de Cat, only you can place pieces in the clearing with your keep at the beginning of the game. As a special action, if your warriors would be removed from the board during battle or for any other reason, you can discard a card of matching suit to that clearing and send them to your keep instead of fully taking them off the board. In your birdsong phase, you place wood at each of the sawmills. During daylight, first you craft by having a matching number of workshops in the proper clearings, as described by the icons on the card you're trying to craft. For example, to craft this root tea, you'd need to have a workshop in 1 mouse clearing. To craft the Brutal Tactics ability, you need to have 2 workshops in fox clearings. Next, you can take up to 3 of the following actions in any order, plus 1 additional action for any bird cards that you discard to spend. Battle, which we described earlier. March, you can move any number of warrior pieces to an adjacent clearing up to 2 times. Recruit, you can recruit new warriors to the board using a recruiter space. Build, spend the corresponding number of wood for your building you want to build in a clearing you control. When building more, some buildings will give you a draw bonus once they're built. Wood must be used from a clearing that is along an uninterrupted path to the new building. You receive the victory points shown for each new building. If a building is removed from the board and returned to your player mat, the victory points are not taken away from your total on the track. Overwork, you can spend a card to add wood to a matching clearing. During evening, draw 1 card plus any bonus you have on your board and discard down to 5 if necessary.
Okay, so the Eyrie are a very salty and fierce faction that used to maintain control of the forest before the stupid Marquise came along and they controlled all of the clearings in the forest. These are why these two are sworn enemies, and the Eyrie is dead set on regaining power, even if it means that their prideful risk-taking leads to a couple of stumbles along the way.
The Eyrie are a very direct faction, aiming to quickly gain control and knock down anyone in their way. This is done using the decree. Your setup includes choosing a leader, either the builder, the charismatic, the despot, or the commander. These leaders have special abilities and victory point gaining capabilities. Each leader has 2 loyal viziers that are placed in the described decree spots to start. The special rules for the Eyrie are, you are the lords of the forest, meaning you rule clearings that are tied for rule. You also have a disdain for trade. Regardless of the crafting bonus listed on the cards, you only get 1 victory point for crafting. During Birdsong, you draw a card if your hand is empty at the start of Birdsong. Then you must add 1 to 2 cards to your decree, with only one of those cards being a wild bird card. The decree is the bulk of the actions for the Eyrie, and placing cards at this step will dictate the actions you will take next. Daylight for the Eyrie consists of crafting, although it tends to be difficult and doesn't really pay off due to their disdain for trade, and resolving the decree. In order to resolve the decree, you must complete the actions in matching clearings according to the suits of the cards placed in the decree slots during Birdsong, such that if you place a rabbit-suited card in the move slot of the decree and begin with the builder leader, you must recruit a warrior in a clearing of your choice and move from a rabbit clearing as well as another clearing of your choice. If you cannot complete the decree in order of left to right, follow the turmoil protocol. You lose 1 victory point per wild card in the decree. Discard all the decree cards but the loyal viziers. Pick a new leader and assign the loyal viziers to the decree based on that new leader. You will immediately end daylight and go to the evening phase. Victory points for the Eyrie are based on roosts present on the board. You score the rightmost victory points on your roost track. You also draw 1 card, then any additional cards as indicated on your player mat, and make sure to discard down to 5 cards.
The Woodlands Alliance is a small but mighty revolution that doesn't want the woods to be dominated by the Marquise de Cat or the Eyrie anymore. The Alliance plays the game by spreading sympathy tokens to surrounding clearings, quietly gaining support, and then revolting and overtaking the clearings once powerful enough. For the Woodland Alliance, setup includes starting with a small deck of supporters that will grow throughout the game. The special abilities of the Alliance are the Outrage and Guerrilla Warfare. Outrage. When a player removes sympathy or moves one of their warriors into a sympathetic clearing, they have to pay the piper and add a matching card from their hand to your deck of supporters. If they can't, you look at their hand, draw a card, and add it to your supporters. Guerrilla War. When defending, you use the higher roll, and the attacker uses the lower roll. During Birdsong, the Alliance may take the following actions any number of times they wish. Revolt. You can spend 2 supporters from your supporter deck, matching a sympathetic clearing, and remove all enemy pieces. You then place a matching base and warriors equal to the total matching sympathetic clearings onto that clearing, and also place a warrior in the officer's box. Spreading sympathy. You can spend the number of supporters listed on the sympathy tract to place sympathy in a clearing adjacent to another sympathetic clearing, if possible. Matching suit with your supporters is required. During Daylight phase, the Alliance can craft cards or abilities using sympathy tokens in the proper clearings as indicated by the craft cards. They can also mobilize supporters by adding a card from your hand to your supporters deck. And Train. Here you can spend a card from your hand matching a built base to place a warrior in the officer's box. For Evening, military operations can be performed up to the number of officers in your officer's box. Here you can move, recruit at bases, battle, and organize. Organizing is a very powerful move for the Alliance, as you can remove a warrior and place sympathy in a clearing. Lastly, draw 1 card, plus any bonus cards as indicated by your player mat, and discard your hands and supporter deck down to 5 cards, unless you have bases on the board to keep more supporters in your deck. If an Alliance base is removed, you must discard all matching supporters, remove half of your officers rounded up. If nor are bases, discard down to 5 supporters. Do keep in mind that each clearing gets only 1 sympathy token. You also have to follow the martial law, where you must pay 1 extra supporter if 3 enemy warriors are on a target clearing where you want to place sympathy. Victory points for the Alliance are gained after sympathy is placed, and the value of victory points is revealed. If sympathy is returned to the player mat, victory points are not taken away from your total on the victory track.
So the Vagabond, as the name suggests, is the lone wanderer of this game. The Vagabond is scurrying through the forest trying to find tools and items in order to accomplish quests, which lead to lots of victory points. The Vagabond is a really adventurous character to play, so it's really fun. Additionally, the Vagabond can become allied with the other factions, which leads to new actions and additional ways to gain victory points. This is how the Vagabond finds his way in a new wilderness. The Vagabond is nimble, meaning he can move regardless of who rules the clearing. As the lone wanderer, the Vagabond Pond is not a warrior and cannot be removed from the board. To begin, you'll choose a character and place your starting items in your satchel. During birdsong, you can refresh 3 items in your satchel and 2 more items per tea that you have. During this phase, it is also when you can slip into the forest at no cost. If you do slip into the forest at this time, it is helpful later for refreshing all of your items at no cost, although it does impact your daylight phase. For daylight phase, you must exhaust the pictured item to do the action listed. The difference between exhausted items and damaged items is simple. Exhausted items can be flipped over and will refresh during birdsong. Damaged items have to be repaired with a hammer. Damage to your items are dealt by other players during battle. Battling for the Vagabond is unique, since you do not have any warriors as the lone wanderer. Your warrior count is determined by the amount of undamaged swords that you have in your satchel. To initiate a battle, you must exhaust a sword, but that does not exclude it from your warrior count. Completing quests gives you compounding victory points based on how many you complete by exhausting the listed items on the card in the proper clearing. If you want to aid another faction, give a card matching your clearing to a player there. You can then take one of their items. This aid action will move them up in your alliance track. The numbers denote how many times you must aid them in one turn to move your relationship forward. You may align in battle with allied pieces and get added victory points for additional aid. The Vagabond crafts with hammers. 1 hammer per required symbol on the card. In evening phase, if you're in the forest, you can repair all of your items. Then you draw 1 card, plus another card for each coin stack that you have. You will discard your hand down to 5. Then you remove items in your satchel down to 6, unless you have additional satchels that allow you to carry more items.
In addition to winning by reaching 30 victory points first, you can also complete dominance cards in order to do this. You have to have at least 10 victory points, and once activated, you remove your tracker from the board and you can no longer score points. Your only goal now is dominance. Dominance cards do not count against your hand limit after activation. You can spend a dominance card for a suit, but instead of discarding it, you'll place it near the pile and it is up for grabs for all other factions, meaning another player can discard a card of the same suit and take the card. They can activate it at a time of their choosing. So there is Root. The game is overall balanced as the factions each work towards individual goals.
We definitely enjoy playing this game with our board game group as well as our friends. It's a really good go-to for us. I personally get a little bit frustrated because the board dynamics are really just quickly changing, and that affects my long-term strategy, which doesn't really exist in this game. That's just a personal problem though. It's still very fun.
Yeah, it's fun that you get to experience a different game depending on what faction you choose, and I personally like to use the Eyrie, although I must admit it's the only faction I've tried. I keep hogging it when I can.
Yeah, you definitely hog it, because I also like to play the Eyrie. It's a very fun strategic game to play, but my favorite is the Alliance because it's kind of a secret sneak attack strategy, and it gets to change every single time that I play.
Let us know what your favorite faction is and any other comments you have in the comment section below on the game Root. And also please remember to like and subscribe.
Please like and subscribe. We have so much content for you. We have the Board Game Buzz. We have other rules videos for you. Check them out here. And, of course, cheers to a good game, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.